So in what ways do you think we can educate BYU about Black culture?
I think this video is a great idea.
What is it you wanted me to reconcile myself to? I was born here almost 60 years ago. I'm not going to live another 60 years. You always told me it takes time. It has taken my father's time, my mother's time, my uncle's time, my brother's and my sister's time, my nieces and my nephew's time. How much time do you want for your progress?
So what are some of the challenges that you think Black students face here on campus at BYU?
That's a great question. um, I don't know.
So what do you think are some of the challenges that Black students face here on campus at BYU?
I think it's more of a self-esteem issue, that they look around and it's almost that they're overpowered by a different color. So they think that they need to be different in some other way so they stand out.
Okay, what do you think are some of the challenges that Black students face here on campus at BYU?
I definitely think some of the bigger challenges are just, feeling accepted. There's a lot of African Americans, I'm sure, that feel that, because they're not white, they can't really fit in. They feel that they don't have a place. And, maybe culturally there are a lot of differences. And so I think, if anything, that's probably the biggest issue, is that feeling of acceptance and socialization.
What are some things that you think Black people experience at this university?
I think some of the things they experience is people look at us differently because of our hair or the way we talk and our style.
Some of the challenges that Black students would face here at BYU, I feel like goes back to the whole prejudice. I guess answer with kind of cliques being formed on campus between whites and blacks, maybe. Obviously, blacks are not as prevalent on campus, which would cause the biggest issue, but I've never seen any blatant prejudice being, any racism outright being acted here on campus. So I don't know.
Yeah, kind of naive. I haven't seen any huge acts of racism, but kind of going along with what he said, I think that there's sort of, I guess, just being a super minority at BYU, I think you'd have to deal with being a Black student, people kind of doing a double take, just kind of being looked at a little bit more, I guess being noticed more, kind of sticking out a lot more than you would, I guess, in another environment or anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree with what these guys are saying as well. I think a lot of the kids at BYU are from Utah, and so they don't see a lot of African Americans, but people outside. So people typically from Utah have a different, more of that traditionalist thought, I think.
What are some of the challenges that Black students face at BYU? I honestly don't know if I have an answer to that. I'm not totally sure on that one.
Some of the challenges that Black people face at BYU are, I think, being represented, being heard, people knowing in general the overall Black culture, having to deal with people kind of using stereotypes to relate to them, and also probably just being looked at more, people not having seen Black people that often around Utah, so they have to kind of check them out a few times to see what they look like, and kind of treating them as if they're foreign.
So 200 out of a student body of nearly 30,000, so less than 1% of the student population. Anytime you make up that small of a population, you can feel kind of uncomfortable, and so I think that just feeling comfortable is definitely a challenge that people face.
Oh man, he's not even that Black.
So do you feel like BYU culture is welcoming of you and of your culture?
That was a hard question to answer. But with the religion classes, I feel that one I have a common ground because I'm a member of the church. So the religion classes is more welcoming to me. But there are some other classes which I feel is not welcoming to me.
I think being half Black and half white has been an interesting experience, just because sometimes people are like, oh man, like he's my black friend, or like sometimes they're like, oh man, this is he's not even that black, you know, like look at him, look at his skin color, you know. And I think it's just, and sometimes I don't even know, is that kid black, is that kid Hispanic, is that kid from the Middle East? So I mean, it kind of like I like it, just being like having something in me, you know, like something in my blood and something I can be proud of. But it definitely is sometimes a little like difficult just when people are kind of like pick and choosing when you can be a certain amount of one thing and when you can be a certain amount of another thing.
At first, it was very, very challenging. Kind of coming to a new culture altogether. I feel like BYU culture is quite very, very different from where I come from. I feel more people over here are more reserved, and they're not really open to, especially foreigners, like those strangers.
I do think that white privilege probably does exist maybe in some places, but I've never noticed it myself.
Oh, I don't believe that it exists. And the reason I say this is because, well, when people bring up white privilege, they often talk about financial discrepancies. They often talk about people of different races being treated differently or being subjected to different acts of discipline because of the color of their skin. And I don't believe that that happens institutionally. I don't believe that happens subjectively.
I don't think so, but I'm not the best one to answer that question, I don't think.
I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I do believe there's some prejudice, especially when it comes to white privilege, coming from a community of a lot of African Americans and whites. So I do believe there still is.
I'm pretty naive about it. I don't have a lot of experience with it here at BYU, but I would say yes. I think there is for sure.
I think that white privilege definitely is a thing. And I think that it's hard for a lot of white people to understand what it is just because it's so much a part of them. But I think it is like, I don't know, I think it's definitely a part of our society.
Let's see. Yeah, definitely. There's plenty of people who, and I think there's people who, I guess you'd say, take advantage of that. There's also plenty of people who don't, and so for them it's not really a thing. It's kind of like something some people use and something other people just kind of ignore, and so it kind of stops being a thing.
Okay, how's your experience as a black student here at BYU been culturally?
So my name is Zion Smiley. I am from Savannah, Georgia on the East Coast. I'm a sophomore here at BYU. My experience at BYU has been, challenging at times. It is difficult to fit in. It's difficult to find a place where you, feel accepted and where you feel like you belong. But honestly, overall, it hasn't been, bad. I'd say my experience overall has actually been pretty positive.
Okay, do you think there's a problem with blackface on campus? Or do you personally have a problem with that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think everyone has the right for their own decisions. We all have our own agency. We can choose what we want to do. So if somebody chooses to act or depict themselves in a certain way, it's their choice. But I'm not going to participate, but I'll definitely tolerate.
I think that's not very chill. Like that's kind of weird. Because I mean, it's one thing to be like understanding and like have more knowledge about another culture, but it's another thing to, especially if it's in a bad connotation, like if it's in terms of racism or to hurt someone else's feelings.
That's true.
So, how was your experience as a black student being at BYU?
As a black student at BYU, it's been kind of hard because it's like the culture's kind of different, and it's like an adjustment. Because like a lot of times it's kind of like people are in like competition with one another, and it's kind of like I feel like a minority, and it's like I feel like I'm not really accepted sometimes. But I try to take the good out of it.
Okay. And so, what are some of the things that black students face at BYU? Some challenges?
Some challenges that we face is that we kind of feel like we're not good enough sometimes. My mentality kind of changes sometimes, and I kind of feel like I don't really belong sometimes because I'm like really like open-minded and stuff, and sometimes it feels like you can be kind of reserved.
How's your experience as a black student being at BYU culturally?
So my name is Mattine Pongo, and I'm from North Carolina. And so it's been a big difference culturally because like when I first came here, it's kind of weird because people are not used to seeing a lot of like minorities or like a lot of different cultures and backgrounds, and so people really don't know how to talk to you, or like they stay away from you, especially like in class. I'll notice a lot of times they'll just avoid sitting by me or like go somewhere else, or they're just afraid to approach me because I think I'm going to be mean or aggressive, or they don't know how black people act, even though we're just like human beings like everybody else.
So what are some of the challenges that you face personally?
Just being in BYU, I think we don't have a lot of events and like school activities that like promote that like I guess talk about different like race and the different cultures and things like that. We can't talk about social issues, I feel like, sometimes because it makes people feel uncomfortable. So that's, I think, really hard when a lot of things are going on in the world or going on currently, and we can't even talk about it and have events about it.
Have you heard of the Black Lives Matter movement?
Yeah, I've heard about it a little bit.
Okay, what are your thoughts? What do you think about it?
I think it's important to focus mostly on everyone. I mean, I understand that there is a lot of injustice, especially at certain parts of the country, but it's important not to take that to the extreme of discriminating in the opposite sense of focusing on certain ethnicities.
So what do you guys think about Black Lives Matter?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know enough about the movement to really have a real opinion one way or the other.
As far as Black Lives Matter, I think it does raise awareness of like inequality and stuff like that.
What is your understanding of Black Lives Matter?
I think that's just more about a society created this, I guess you could say, function about how there's discrimination and racism against a certain a sect or color, such as Black Lives Matter, that all lives matter, no matter what.
What do you think of Black Lives Matter?
I think it's great. Is that like something on campus, or is that?
No, just the whole movement itself.
Oh, I think it's wonderful.
So can you tell me, some of the experiences you've had at BYU?
So like the experience that I had, this is like the craziest experience. Like I was in the bookstore and then I was gonna buy something, but I didn't have my wallet, so I put it back. And as I'm walking out, like this lady looked at me strange. She was like, "Can I see your pockets right quick?" And then I looked at her and I showed it to her, but at the same time, I felt kind of bad on the inside because I'm like, well, obviously, I don't have anything in my hands. Like, why you need to see my pockets? And the way she looked at me, it wasn't like an approach that I would have thought that was good.
Okay, so do you think you would call that discrimination?
I kind of feel like it was because she gave me like that dirty look in a way, and she like looked at me up and down. And I feel like if I was like some other kind of like, if I was high class looking or something, like she probably would assume, oh, he probably like left his wallet or something. But she kind of looked at me kind of weird, and I didn't feel right.
My experience as a BYU student has been interesting for the most part. I feel like being a black student, it's like this perception that you're automatically like cool or hip, so everyone wants to be your friend. But I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's like unwanted attention. Like I didn't ask to be like the center of attention. I feel like just the day-to-day experience I have is like I've never felt like I've been like really comfortable around white people. I have a lot of associates and acquaintances that are white, they're the homies, but like I feel like every time I talk to them, like it's always like a cultural disconnect. It's just like surface level conversations. Like I can talk about class, I can talk about like what happened this weekend, but like I can't really talk about like social movements that's going on. Like honestly, I've never talked to any of my white friends about like the Black Lives Matter movement or like all the shooting that's been happening like around like domestically and stuff. So I just feel like it's just like for the most part like a cultural disconnect.
So what's your name and where are you from?
My name is Emmanuella Lansana, and I came to the state in 2008, so I've been in Pennsylvania for 7 years. And I'm originally from Sierra Leone. I moved to Provo in April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so how's your experience as a black student at BYU been culturally?
Culturally, it has been really nice, and it hasn't been really bad as a black student. I mean, sometimes, people look at my crazy hair.
Have I ever been discriminatory against my knowledge? I would say that I've probably said things that people found to be offensive. So, I mean, if that's prejudiced in any way, so I mean, that's what it is. But yes, I definitely think that I've said some things where people took it in a bad way.
I can't think of any specific moment that I've been prejudiced against someone else, although we all have biases that we may not recognize. I have heard people make prejudice or discriminatory comments. Usually it's in joking form rather than like serious.
I'm sure I have at some point. I think everyone has at some point, you know, even if you, especially unintentionally. I don't think I've intentionally meant to do something like that, but
I feel like the biggest thing that I see, and I'm guilty of this too, but we make a lot of like jokes that have to do with racial stereotypes.
So in what ways do you think you have had to conform at BYU?
I just being quiet about just like, for example, like talking about Black Lives Matter movement or just talking about like my political beliefs or things like that. Like I've had to be more like, I guess not say as much, or just because you can hear a lot of backlash or a lot of like get into trouble even though it's not necessarily a bad thing to have different opinions or different viewpoints.
What do you think about how diverse this campus is?
The diversity is not that much. The campus is very not diverse. Not like, I came from Penn State, and Penn State was really diverse. So it's not that diverse yet.
I'm from Reno, which is in Nevada, and there's like definitely a wider diversity of people there. And I feel like here it's like hard to, you know, find a lot of people with from different backgrounds and diversities. I feel like most people here are from Utah. So
what do I think about the diversity of BYU? I don't know if there is a ton. I feel like I do see a little bit of diversity, but I feel like there definitely could be more on campus.
I think the most, like the area that I felt like the most, like my race affected my experience here is like with dating. Like I've had guys say like black and white say like I don't date black girls. That's been like the biggest obstacle for me. Well, most students are LDS, so you think the gospel would be like the unifying force, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that there's a long way to go. Conversations need to be had. A lot of progress that needs to be made. And I think that it starts with like having open discussions and conversations.
What ways do you think that you could help Black students on campus feel more comfortable?
Probably reaching out to them, just being a friend. I think that's probably one of the best ways. I think treating everyone the same rather than treating people differently for who they are or what they've done is very important.
How could I personally help the Black student experience at BYU be better? I think all of us just need to do our very best to treat everybody with respect and treat them with decency. And I think that if we consciously make an effort to treat somebody differently because of the color of their skin, whether it's better or worse, is harmful.
I think it's just a matter of treating them like anyone else. I don't think like you should like put the group of like, oh, they're black people, they're like a group. I think, you know, they're just students, they're people, treat them the same way as everybody else. I don't think you should look at them any differently. So
being able to treat black people with common courtesy and respect just like everyone else.
Okay, so what do you think we could do to teach BYU about our culture and be more accepted?
I feel like one thing we could do, like personally, is that we can be more ourselves without being afraid to. Because a lot of times, especially me, honestly, like coming here, I knew who I was and everything. But the minute I got discouraged and realized that I was like a minority, I kind of tried to join in along with the other like majority. So I kind of hid who I was. And so I feel like if we be more true to ourselves and express ourselves more, it could show them that we're cool too. You know, we're not just someone who has to copy or pattern after somebody else.
What do you think can be done on campus to accommodate Black students more?
So one of my best buddies is Black. We served in the same mission together. I know that he's part of a couple clubs that are all for Black or African American students. And so I know that that's one thing he really likes. So maybe we could have more of those clubs.
One of the biggest things is just provide a way for multicultural students to just voice their, opinions. And, because I think a lot of times, people need an environment where they can vent, where they can talk about, you know, the things they go through day to day. And sometimes when they talk about those issues, it helps them to feel better about it. And so I think we just need an outlet where people can speak out and, you know, feel better about stuff.
That's a good question. I feel one thing that BYU can do is just have more awareness, more cultural awareness. I know a lot of it is with the individual person and they have to make their own choice, but BYU can do a better job with promoting just being culturally aware and sensitive to other people's beliefs and cultures that they grew up with. Not everyone grew up in church all their life, and not everyone is from the same culture that's the majority here at BYU. I feel a lot of what happens is the culture out here is mixed up with doctrine of the church. And I feel if they had more classes or more events where they just promote learning about other races and things, and a class or just like event where you go over things not to say that can be seen as offensive, and just promote love and just understanding of one another and not judging one another.
What do I think BYU can do to better accommodate black students is feel like being a religious school has its perks. Like I feel like whatever general authorities say, like it resonates with the students for the most part. So I think that like I think bishoprics and like general authorities should like do their part to bring up the fact that black people may feel I don't know, isolated. Like I feel like if it comes from them, like it'll resonate for the most part. Like Thomas S. Monson or like Jeffrey L. Holland can just like just talk about how like the difficulties of being a minority in a predominantly white school like BYU.
My experience as a black student on BYU campus has been good and bad. I've experienced a lot of good things. People are nice to me. People ask me where I'm from, and they enjoy, you know, the things I have to say. But it's also been negative where I've been treated different. I feel based on how I dress, how I speak. When it comes to clothing, right now I'm dressed pretty regular. But there's just certain clothing I wear where I feel I'm treated different. Like there's a jacket that I have. It's just all black and like it's really cool. It has like designs and stuff on it. But I realize when I wear it, the way people look at me and talk to me and walk away from me are different. There will be times where I say hi to someone walking down the sidewalk and I'll be ignored. But when I'm not wearing this particular jacket, I won't be ignored. Actually, I still get ignored, but not as much. It's the clear difference. I remember one time I was walking to campus and I said good morning to a girl, and it was high enough where she could hear me, but she literally turned the other way and walked directly past me without saying anything. Then there was another time where someone literally crossed the street because I was walking in their pathway. A lot of assumptions, people just make assumptions about the music I listen to, how I act because of my color, of my skin. And that's based off of stereotypes, but you would think that being at a school where you're supposed to emulate love and Christ-like attributes, you wouldn't judge someone based off what you think they will act like or speak like. So that's been my experience so far.
I hope that every American, regardless of where he lives, will stop and examine his conscience about this and other related incidents. This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Today we are committed to a worldwide struggle to promote and protect the rights of all who wish to be free.